Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Right now, I mean, if you're listening to this in the future, you know, these things stay up online, but hoping everyone who's in the path of Hurricane Harvey is doing okay. It's been some horrible destruction down there. Tom had horrible weather out in Florida too, right? Barely made it to this podcast. So, wishing everyone well. I won't complain about it being somewhat too warm for my liking in Vancouver, because otherwise we're extremely fortunate. Very sunny and nice here.
Yeah, I have a lot of family that lives in that area, in and around Houston. The family that I know about, well, I talked to my mom, and she says she talked to most people and heard that everybody's pretty much fine. But a lot of people are flooded in.
Yeah.
They're in houses, but they can't get out. I mean, if they could get out, there's really nothing to go to because everything's closed or out of food or rotten or whatever. So hopefully this will be all over with soon. We should say the date or something at the beginning of these podcasts so people, no, I'm not going to do that, but we could. But anyways, it's Harvey, the day that Harvey hit land and decided to just stay there, just hang out, and then maybe go back out there and get re-energized and come back again, pulling a Camille. If you don't know what Camille is, that was the hurricane that completely messed up Mississippi. And not that anybody could tell. Yes, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You go to www.avrant.com. You can leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRantPodcast. YouTube.com/C/AVRant, where you can see your question being answered by our faces, making noises. Occasionally, my camera probably zooming in on my hand, focusing on this.
There it is.
Focusing on that. And focusing on this. And focusing on that.
Moire shirts.
I have Moire shirts on sometimes.
A little bit of Tom's arm poking through because the green screen doesn't totally catch all of it, like right over there.
Yeah, I have no green screen, by the way.
I do.
Doesn't matter.
My side.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. So you can go there for that. There's also angry comments there, I'm sure. I wouldn't know. I don't look.
Yeah. Any of the negative comments we get are definitely found on YouTube.
They are there.
Everyone else who emails us is like, really appreciate the podcast. Thanks for the work you put in. All that. It's very, very nice to every single person at YouTube. These guys suck.
You guys are so boring. I don't know that anybody's actually said that, but I could see it being said. Let me see. If you want to contact us directly, you can contact Rob at avrant.com. His Twitter's at FirstReflect. We have Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter's at avrant_Tom. For the least active Twitter account in the history of Twitter accounts.
It's useful for when the audio-only version comes out. You post that. There it is.
That's a bot does that. I don't do that. Whenever I post it, just automatically post it to my Twitter. I am a bot on Twitter right now. I will go back. I was thinking of live tweeting my watching of The Defenders, which is my excuse for not having watched The Defenders yet. In my defense, I have watched other movies that we are going to talk about in a few seconds, but I have not watched The Defenders for no really good reason that I can come up with. We also have our producer, Austin. Austin takes care of the videos that you see on YouTube and helps with the question list. He's also doing the SVS. It's not really an SVS review. It's more of a video tutorial on how to deal with oddly shaped rooms and dual subwoofers.
Yeah.
Is what he's doing. And we're partnering with SVS for that, so he's working on that right now. I know the boxes have arrived. We'll talk about that in a second. That's coming up. Austin has, his Twitter is at Austen, T-E-N, Austen Pond, P-O-N-D, I think. It doesn't have an E at the end.
Nope.
Anyways, Austin has his own podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast. That's actually a podcast about navel gazing.
All right.
Just weird, because it's about looking at naval ships and naval gazing as a title for a podcast seems like the way you should have gone with that. It's a very nice, it's got a good pun going on there.
Yeah. It's not the saying, it's not the figurative, it's a literal gazing at the Navy.
Navy, yes. The naval gazing. And but he went with We Watch Movies, which is a weird, odd thing.
What they went with.
He's a strange duck. Strange duck, that Austin. He's just his brain doesn't work like ours. All right? It'll be fine. All right. we're going to be thanking some listeners of the week. Our listeners of the week, we've got a couple of them this time, and many of them have gone to www.avrant.com and clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. There they could leave us a PayPal donation, either with their credit card or with their PayPal account. So we want to thank Martin, Greg, Brad, and Jeff for doing just that. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, Martin, Greg, Brad, Jeff, thank you all so much for those donations.
We really appreciate those that go into our coffers to help pay for our hosting fees and other things. Possibly whatever chiropractic work that Austin will need after trying to move those.
No kidding.
Ultra 16 subs that he's got to push around his house. We also want to thank Casey. Casey decided to support us in a different way. He went and bought some subwoofers and let the company that he bought them from know it was because of us, and that was SVS. He bought one? No, he bought
I think just one.
SVS PC 2000 subwoofer, and he is very happy. SVS is very happy. His wife is not so happy.
Yeah.
She is not on the happy side. Now, to Casey's wife, I just want to say, this is not my fault. Okay? I don't remember Casey's questions in particular, but I will tell you this. If the wife being unhappy had entered the equation, I would have highly recommended he not do whatever it is that makes his wife unhappy. Rob is a single man. No one can speak for what Rob might have said.
Yeah, I told Casey on Twitter that it's okay, because if his wife is really mad, he can just sleep on the couch, which is closer to his new PC 2000 subwoofer. And it's round and soft, so he could even cradle it while he sleeps.
Okay. But if it rolls over on you, you're a dead man.
Crush your arm.
Casey, enjoy your subwoofer. Casey's wife, I'm very sorry. And Casey's a terrible person. You should make him pay. In the news, we've got Samsung, Panasonic, and 20th Century Fox. They have formed the HDR10 Plus partnership. Starting in 2018, they plan to launch a certification and logo program in an attempt to make the royalty-free alternative to Dolby Vision into the de facto HDR format.
God.
Well,
why? Why are they doing this? Just
why not? Who cares?
I guess.
Who cares? It's just, what? This is great. Another logo for manufacturers to put on the side of their receivers.
Yeah, and since HDR10 Plus...
HDR10 Plus certified means we'll pass through metadata, which literally anything can do at any point.
But
like
since
now.
Reportedly, for some reason that I can't understand, it requires HDMI 2.1, I guess that's going to be the reason to upgrade your AV receiver again. Let's just stop it. Stop it with all these formats. It's so dumb.
Yeah, I know.
20th Century Fox is the only studio that has not committed to releasing home releases using Dolby Vision. All the other studios have, even Disney, who came on really late, but they're like, we're going to use Dolby Vision. 20th Century Fox is appropriately named. They're in the last century now. Just stop it. It's dumb.
Via Nathan. So we got some super late breaking news. This is just for the podcast, I guess. But ahead of CEDIA, Monoprice has announced their lineup of THX certified monolith subwoofers. So there's a $500 500 watt THX Select 10 inch, an $800 500 watt THX Select 12 inch.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly the same sub in a slightly different box.
Yeah, well, with a bigger driver too.
There's a bigger driver, bigger box, same amplifier.
Yeah.
And a $1,300, $1,000 watt THX Ultra 15 subwoofer.
Getting THX Ultra certification for a lone subwoofer is a challenge. So that means there's some power behind that beast.
Yeah. They've got to be able to hit all the requisites. They got to be able to play relatively flat from 80 hertz down to, what is it? Like 20 or 25.
Oh, for Ultra, you got to get right down to 20.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's interesting because still look at the price points, right? And these are DSP controlled as well. That was another thing that they mentioned. Okay. So they're fully DSP controlled, so very nicely protected. But it's like the price points end up being very similar to the other high value subs of similar specification and output in that. If you look at SVS and Rhythmic and HSU and Power Sound Audio, it's like even Monoprice can't completely undercut everybody.
Right.
You still end up with a similar thing. So,
and I'll just go ahead and say it right now. If anybody's like, well, do you think this will be an SVS killer or whatever? I'm like, nope. It's going to be, they're all going to be about the same.
Yeah, but it's certainly an alternative.
It's an alternative.
It's not a worse value by any means, but big boxes again. Big boxes. So you got to take that into consideration.
Yeah, build your box, babies. Got some comments here. Michael, he says that when Vizio announced their latest firmware updates for their TVs that put the streaming apps on the TVs themselves rather than being forced to cast them from a tablet, we wondered when that update would roll out for the older 2016 models. Michael says that his 2016 M series just got the update. So it wasn't a long wait at all. And he also says a message comes up giving you the option to order a traditional remote control for free if you want one. So
that would be nice. You had to do everything on the tablet before. I think they came with like one of those small.
Yeah, it comes with a little remote. Yeah,
like but super, not very many
like
buttons.
On, off, volume channel.
Volume channel, something like that. So like, if you want an actual full remote control, we'll give you one of those too now for free. So yeah, good on Vizio for doing that. Good on them.
Nathan answered our question about whether the forthcoming Ultra HD Blu-ray release of Blade Runner that we discussed, I believe it was last week, is an entirely new remastering that goes back to the original negatives or just an upscaling of the existing digital scans that were used for the previous Blu-ray releases. It turns out it's a bit of both. When they completely remastered the movie to make the final cut is in capitals, so it's the name of it, they went back to the original negatives and scanned them at 4K, with the 65mm film portion scanned at 8K. And those scans contain more dynamic range than SDR, so they are using those same digital scans, but regrading the whole movie for the wider color and higher dynamic range offered by Ultra HD Blu-ray. So there you go.
Yeah. Bit of both.
Still not going to buy it. Chris took our advice from last week and replaced his crackling, frequently loose... I'm sorry. I'm going to try this again. Chris took our advice from last week and replaced his crackling, frequently coming loose speaker wires and crimp-connected banana plugs with fresh 14-gauge speaker wire and new banana plugs. Okay? So if that sentence is making sense to you, welcome to the world. Basically, he replaced the speaker wire.
Yeah,
that's what it comes
and
down
banana
to.
plugs.
It doesn't matter. This is speaker wire was the important part. He went back to some scenes he knows created crackling before, and everything sounds great. So he's relieved to know that his speakers are just fine, and everything sounds okay, and it wasn't the speakers. Because he's just thinking. He's like,
could it be the speakers? Could they be damaged?
Because they've damaged them. All right. And here we go with Austin. Austin has had something dropped off at his front door recently. If you are not on the YouTube channel watching this in YouTube, then you should. And when it comes out, whenever that comes out, it is a PB16 Ultra PB ported box. It's big. It does not look like it's going to fit in the door.
I know. It's on a pallet. I'm like, I'll bet you SVS designed that outer box to just fit through like a 36-inch wide doorway or something, because that thing looks like it's going to be a tight squeeze just to get it inside, or maybe you have to depalletize it outside just to even get it in.
I will tell you that when we moved the wall in this room to make it into a rectangular room, because it was like an L shape, a very small, very oddly L-shaped room, we made this rectangular. Tom Gage, who's the guy who basically did all this for me with my help and other people's help, but he would design everything. He went, "We should put a 36-inch door in here." I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "We should put a 36-inch door in here just in case." This is the in case.
Yep.
This is the
Could
thing.
be useful.
You never know. So, yeah, big old subwoofer. All right. We're going to get to the questions here in a second, but I did watch some movies this week. I watched Alien Covenant on a dare.
Dear. Yep. Yeah, that was our after the podcast have our little hangout party where we just chat for a little while we're downloading files and editing stuff between us. We talked about Alien Covenant. You can't say we didn't warn you.
So bad. It's just so the aliens are so okay. Now Rob said something during when we were talking about this movie. He said, by the end, I just wanted to stop watching it. I wanted to stop watching these people doing the things that they're doing. I no longer cared. I just wanted it to be over.
Yeah.
And I understood about 2/3 of the way through the movie when, like during scary movies when things are tense and they give you a break.
Sure.
In the movie, like some sort of scene. Okay, they're kind of safe. Now they're talking about something else or something's happening. They did that, but because nothing was tense or scary. You thought the movie was over, and then it would start back up. You're like, "Oh wait, it's still going on." Like that's not the. And they had like 3 of those. I was like, "Oh Jesus, make this movie stop!" It's so bad. So like Prometheus at least was decent from the beginning of it. This one had like no redeeming value whatsoever. The aliens were terrible. When they finally got the good alien at the end, he was terrible. They ran like they ran like the Wile E. Coyote. You know, the legs kind of seem to pinwheel. I don't know how to go. Just so very bad on just so many levels. I also watched Death Note, which was the movie that was Netflix original that they made based on the anime, based on the manga. I have not read the manga. I have seen the anime. It's like 20, 30 episodes, 50 episodes long. It's forever. It's very deep, very detailed. That movie is truly, truly awful.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's not quite as awful because it's a Netflix movie and you kind of know you're getting yourself into like sci-fi channel level production values. They had Willem Dafoe doing the voiceover for Ryuk, the demon dude in there, and you could say they spend most of their money on that. But just so not faithful to the original and really poor characterizations and acting was kind of like that. Who's the girl from Twilight? Kristen something, right?
Yeah, Kristen Stewart.
Yeah, they like low rent, knock off Kristen Stewart in there.
Version of her. Okay,
she
was she comatose? Considering Kristen Stewart doesn't bother to emote at all.
Well, she seemed to be she was more emotive than that.
Okay,
I think. But she just wasn't very good, and he wasn't very good, and I didn't care about either one of them. And the whole idea that if you've seen the anime is that this kid is not the good guy. The main character is not the good guy. He was never the good guy. He was the good guy from the very beginning to the very end. He was the bad guy. And they said, well, we can't have that. So they kind of tried to make him the good guy. You kind of have a redeeming quality. I was like, well, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of the thing. So
missed the point a bit, huh?
Not real pleased with that. All right, let's get into these questions here. We want to get through as many as we can because I'm going to bed at 11. Brandon. So Brandon has a 5.1.4 Atmos speaker setup with a 120-inch projection screen, but the room is not a dedicated theater. It has an irregular shape, light-colored walls, tile floor, glass at the front door that can't be blacked out, and even with every available door closed, it's still about 10,000 cubic feet. He's using the Epson 3500 projector with a Screen Innovation Slate ambient light rejecting screen. His receiver is a Denon AVRX 4300H that we recommended. His speakers are all Revell Performa series towers and center up front with in-wall surrounds and in-ceiling Atmos speakers. And his subwoofers is a sealed Dayton 18HO design powered by a Behringer EP4000 amp. So a Dayton is a DIY thingy, right? It's like
yeah. I assume that he got that from Parts Express.
Yeah, 18 would be an 18-inch driver, and the HO would be high output.
That's
which is something that he might need. So you might be, if you're on YouTube, you're seeing pictures of this right now.
Mm-hmm. Pictures and diagrams. Yep.
There's a screen. It's a big gray screen. That's what the light projecting screen thing is about. So he's got the big gray screen.
Yes,
you can
gray
see
tint there, definitely. I mean, you can just compare it to the ceiling, even in the photograph. Like the ceiling's white. That's clearly gray. That means black will look that black with nothing being projected. Yeah.
Right. So the darker one and stuff like that. So he does have some curtains that close off the outside there a little bit. It looks like he could. He did not in the picture, but he did.
Right.
He could. All right, so let's go. So he wants to know what he should focus on first to further improve his setup. So we're looking at tile. We're looking at front door on the right wall that has not only are they both the doors glass.
Yep.
With the wood frames, but there is a big like half moon glass thing over the top of it. None of this has any
way to close off that light. Yeah.
Well, there's no substantive screening that can go on, any curtains anywhere on this thing. They look like it might have something, but it's more like consider it to be frosted for those of you who cannot see this because you're listening to the podcast. The left side has. Am I get right? Yeah, the left side has an opening into. Could be a dining room kitchen area, but there are curtains that are blackout curtains that he could close there, so the left side can get darker. It doesn't look like there's anything in the. Oh, there is something in the back. There's a hallway in the back. Exits to who knows what.
Yep.
Also can't
open, irregularly shaped, not terribly well light controlled during the day anyway.
All right. So now that we've been through all that, it's sort of like a trapezoidal shape and everything else. So there's all sorts of things that are going on here. So he asks to begin with. He wants to know what he can do to improve. So he's looking at room treatments. So the aesthetic limit the aesthetics limit his placement option. He has a rug in front of his seating, and the Revell speakers deliver very even, smooth frequency response. But do we have any suggestions where he might place more room treatments that would make a huge, worthwhile difference? Huge and worthwhile. I'm looking back at these pictures.
Looking at the rest of his room, towards the back of the room, he's got his dining room set up, sort of a cabinet hutch at the very back there. But this is almost the opposite of Craig's room last week, where we're like, Craig didn't have any dedicated absorption panels, but he had a lot of stuff around his room that was scattering the sound, breaking up, the hard reflections. This is like the opposite. There's lots of hard, flat, continuous surfaces, not a lot to break up. The sound that's going. You do have this tile floor. He has at least a rug that's in between his speakers and his seats, but lots of hard, flat surfaces. So this is a place where putting absorption basically anywhere
will make a difference,
will help,
sure.
Because you are downright echoing in this room. I mean, it might not be the echo to the point of you say a word and you hear it come back to you a moment later, but there's reverberation happening in this room for sure. So I'm looking towards the back of the room, because the front of the room, I don't know how much he can do there. He could maybe do something along the
front left corner. Looks like he could maybe put some sort of bass trapping in that. And that's about all I see.
Yeah, it'd be like the ceiling to wall edges, corners, possibly.
He's not doing. You're not gonna walk in your house and look at that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I highly doubt you're gonna put something on the ceiling in here. So I'm mostly looking towards the back of your room. Now you have this long wall, which is like essentially his right wall towards the back.
Right.
That to me looks like a place where decoration could go, which means printed panels would not look out of place. That some nice. I
can't figure out what's
posters
on those two walls around that table that's back there. There's like a little black thing that looks like, was a dartboard maybe that opens up? Oh, is that a dartboard?
I think it might just be a large clock or something. Oh, I see. Oh, the little thing with the doors. Yeah, that's next to his in-wall surround speaker.
On the right rear wall.
Yeah,
or side wall behind him. And then there's something else on the other side, which could be a clock or whatever. Yeah. But I agree. That's the spot where I see that you could actually do something. I mean, even at the very back of the room, he's got this glass hutch that's just as reflective as can be. So, there's not a lot you can do. And
this is a place where absorption anywhere will help you out, because it's just about knocking down the reverberant sound that's going to be ringing throughout that room longer than ideally you would like. So this is one where you get some printed panels, some nice posters, some nice pictures that would look like decoration you might put up anyway, and stick them anywhere that makes visual sense.
Right, I agree. I'm not seeing a whole lot else that you can do.
Nah,
anywhere.
Not realistically. And I mean, you do have, those Revel speakers, they do have the nice wide, even dispersion. That means the reflections that you do hear will at least match the direct sound, which means your brain won't wig out and go, what the heck is going on in here? And, he's saying he's not having trouble hearing. Things sound clear, but it'll.
But the question is, do we see anything that will make a huge, worthwhile difference? I don't see any way that you can make a huge difference. I see ways you can make a worthwhile difference, but they're going to be minor, because you can't place enough to fix the inevitable ringing. But again, one of the quote-unquote benefits of having a large, irregularly shaped room is we don't always know what's happening, which means it could be that things are just bouncing right out of the room and never coming back. Could be. Not likely, but it could be. He says, as a side note, he used the Odyssey. Did I skip something?
Nope, that's the one.
As a side note, he used the Odyssey editor app to limit the range of correction so that Odyssey is no longer EQing the high frequencies. He thinks it sounds better. Is that reasonable?
Absolutely.
Well, you answered your own question when you said he thinks it sounds better.
Yeah.
If you think it sounds better, then it's reasonable. That's what you should do. And actually, it makes a lot of sense, because those are going to be the frequencies that are going to ring the most. At least going to be most audible to you, I think. And knocking them down a little bit is certainly something that I would consider doing.
Yeah, no, the theory behind not EQing the upper frequencies because they're far more directional. That makes a total sense. I'm pretty much in agreement with that. It wasn't an option with Odyssey before, but it is now if you have one of the newest receivers that can use the editor app. So I'm all on board with that.
Yeah. So he asked about surround back speakers. He could install two more in-wall surround back speakers flanking the hutch at the back of the room. Would that greatly improve his soundstage, or would be a bit of a waste? I think it would be a bit of a very big waist.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it in this situation. I mean, they're definitely not like anywhere near centered to where your seating is. Be way over. Your surround speakers that are in wall beside you are already slightly behind you, so at least you're getting some of that fill in behind you. That's not something I would go and spend your money on. I don't think that's worth doing.
Let me go back here. Where's the subwoofer? I don't remember.
It's behind his couch. So in the first photo where you're looking from behind the seats at the screen, it's behind his couch on the left.
I can't see it. All right, I can't see it on my screen here, so that's all right. He's the only person in this house who cares about even uniform bass, so he hasn't garnered much support for adding a second gigantic subwoofer. But would his seat benefit from adding a second sub?
So he sent us a graph. This is prior to having run Odyssey. So this is what the subwoofer does all on its own. The graph that he's sent. And honestly, it doesn't look too bad at all.
No,
he's got lots of output to below 20 hertz, so extension certainly is no problem here. He has this one quite narrow dip at, about 52 hertz
That's what it looks like, yeah.
But it's a very narrow band. This isn't a wide null. And then he has another one at the harmonic, just around 100 hertz, which makes complete sense. So there's something bouncing in his room that's creating a bit of a null, but it's a very narrow null.
This is something that's would be very easy to fix. Like this frequency response would be very easy to fix with just a parametric EQ.
Yeah,
you could focus on 70 hertz. You could focus on, you can knock down
where he has a bit of a hump. So that's
that 70 hertz hump. You can knock that down. You could knock down whatever that is at about 48 a little bit. You can do whatever you want to do to whatever that is at 10. I mean, I don't know. Was 12 or 15 or something like that? That weird bump at the end that looks like Kilroy was here. You could, and then that's basically a flat line.
Yeah,
I mean, with very little to do. So this looks very good.
You could potentially try to argue that narrow null you have right around 52 there. I mean, that's something that without physically moving the subwoofer you can't really fix.
Yeah.
That would be about the only argument you could make for adding a second sub, but because it's such a narrow region, I mean, granted, if that specific frequency gets played, it's not going to be as loud as it ought to be in your primary seat. But it's going to be so rare.
I know.
If that was a much wider dip, then I'd be more concerned. But because it's essentially a notch.
The thing that we're saying by we look at this is that Odyssey is going to have no problems knocking this out.
Exactly.
That's the thing that really comes down to is I look at this and it's not like, weird dips, huge humps, huge dips everywhere with very wide, troughs and everything else. It's just this one little pull down here, like somebody took a string and pulled down on it. And then everything else is either a hump or kind of all in the same area.
Yeah.
And this is quite easy to fix. You could do this with the old Velodyne SMS1.
Sure.
You could knock this out.
That was very close to what Odyssey does anyway. So.
Yeah. So,
so your argument for trying to get a second... Now, in your other seats, the response might be much worse or it might be much different. But if nobody else cares, and that's the response you're getting in your seat, it's kind of hard to make the argument that you need a second sub.
This is a man who is desperate for us to help him spend some money.
I know.
And we are not being very helpful here. And I have a feeling, dude, that
printed panels. I mean, you can spend a lot on printed panels if you want to. You don't need to, but you can.
That's going to have a much harder time. Yes, tell your wife that we said you don't need a second sub. He couldn't physically fit the larger of the two Revel Performa center speakers, so he had to go with the C205, which is a two-way MTM design rather than the three-way C208 with its tweeter above a mid-range design. He's not having any dialogue intelligibility issues, nor any noticeable lobing or comb filtering issues, but he can't help but wonder if the larger three-way center would sound a lot better. He could swap out his equipment cabinet for something that would allow for the larger center to fit if we think it would be worth it. Again, you've already answered your own questions. You're not having dialogue intelligibility issues. You're not noticing any comb filtering or lobing. Wow, thank God I have a pop filter here. That was awful. I'm gonna have to get a napkin from my stupid computer screen. It's just if you're not watching the YouTube, I just spit everywhere. I have no idea how that happened. That's not even a sound that should have been. Anyways, could it sound better? The answer is yes. Will it sound much better? I would question that heavily.
Yeah, I mean, this is the strength of Revel's design. This is one of the reasons they use this waveguide on their tweeter to control its directivity. This is one of the reasons why they use very steep filters between the two drivers, so that there aren't a lot of frequencies where both the mid-range driver and the tweeter are playing simultaneously, which is why you don't get a lot of lobing or a lot of comb filtering. That happens when you have two drivers playing a lot of frequencies in common, but they use these very steep filters at Revel. They make well-designed speakers. They make about the only on-wall stick-style, lifestyle-looking speakers that I found the center speaker to work nicely, because they didn't just take the vertical one and turn it sideways. They actually designed the thing with a proper crossover and changed the driver layout so that you didn't get lobing and comb filtering problems. So having bought from a company that designs speakers well, even though it's this MTM design, they did the things you need to do with an MTM design to make sure you don't have the regular problems that you get with a lesser designed MTM design. If it plays loud enough for you and the dialogue sounds clear, I mean, perhaps the 208 will sound ever so slightly more, it might have more headroom. It can play louder. That's just a fact. But other than that,
I have such a problem with people like, oh, I want something that has more headroom. You know what headroom is? Nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, I mean, if you literally can't make the speaker play loud enough to satisfy you, then you need a speaker
that's not
that can play
headroom
louder.
anymore, though, is it? That's not headroom.
Right.
If you can't make the speaker play loud enough, then your speaker doesn't have any headroom, and headroom is always not used.
Potential.
I mean, it's potential for you to go to a bigger room, which you're not going to do. If you're not having any problems here, I see no reason for you to spend.
Not much argument there. Yeah.
Lastly, he asks, should he upgrade his projector? He'd like to jump to 4K, wide color, and HDR, but his room is not ideal for projection. Would the Epson 5040 UB or any of the JVC models offer comparable brightness to his current Epson 3500 during the day? And at night, would he be able to see the full benefits of the JVC's deeper black levels? Well, we got a problem here, and that's you're in a very unique environment. Well, I mean, not unique, but challenging environment. Mm-hmm. And so you've addressed that by having a Epson 3500, which is essentially a light cannon.
Yep.
Puts out a ton of light. Then you have an ambient light rejecting screen, so you can see it during the day, which is great.
Yeah.
But then you take that same screen, now you have a gray screen that you're using to do this. Now you're going to help the black levels look better during the day.
Yep.
So having a projector with wider color gamut and gray screens tend to shift color slightly anyways. Yeah, I don't know. I guess if it were me, I was like, okay, if you're going to do that, then you should have two projectors. I know this is going to sound crazy, but you should keep the 3500 and the gray screen for the day. Then you drop down in front of it a drop screen that's white, 1.0 gain for your nighttime viewing with your 4K projector.
Well,
but that's insane.
I'm going to say that, I mean, normally I love recommending the JVCs, especially for HDR, because one thing I want to mention, when you're watching HDR, I mean, having spent some time now with my parents' OLED, which doesn't hit 1,000 nits, oh no. But really, it is that intra-scene contrast. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's being able to have the really dark things on the screen at the same time as these small, very bright highlights. So all of these shootouts that have been going on recently, where even though the OLEDs don't get as bright, they've been winning even in the HDR comparisons against the brighter LCDs, and it's all because they can have these very dark things on the screen at the exact same time as the very bright things. Now, the JVCs in the projector world excel at that because they have this very high native contrast. They don't need to necessarily use a dynamic iris, and fudge the numbers where it's full off to full on, that type of thing. It's like the scene is there. They have very deep black next to very bright white. However, in this situation, the JVCs, even at their brightest, are about half as bright as your 3500.
Oh, right.
That's significant. And to answer the question directly, at night, would you get the full benefit of the JVC's deeper black levels? Not really, because you do have this white ceiling, these light-colored walls. You're still going to have light coming in from other parts of the house or through the windows of some sort. It's not pitch blackness in there by any means. So I can't justify spending the higher cost. On the other hand, you asked about the Epson 5040. That can get just as bright as your 3500. It's a very bright projector. It can actually, according to Projector Central, get a little bit brighter than the 3500. You know, if you put it in a dynamic mode and the lamp on high and all that, which you might not want to do. But the point is, the light output is there. Now, the only reason I'm going to tell you not to go ahead and get a 5040 right now, because we've shot down almost all the other ideas. Except for printed panels, we've shot down pretty much all the other ideas.
I know. It feels weird.
Upgrading to a projector like the 5040 UB that can do 4K, it's wobble K, but it can accept a 4K signal. It can do the wider color. It can do HDR, and it has the brightness that you need. The only reason I'm going to tell you not to run out and buy that right now is because CEDIA is next week. Epson's going to announce something, most likely, going to announce something. Maybe it's a 5050 UB, right? That's what we're expecting. It's probably not going to be anything earth-shatteringly different, but maybe it'll accept 4K at 60 frames per second because the 5040 UB tops out at 4K at 30 frames per second. I'm expecting that to be like the killer feature of the 5050 UB or whatever the model ends up being. If nothing else, the 5040 UB is going to go down in price when that new model starts shipping. So I think the Epson could be worthwhile, especially if you're just like, I want to upgrade something, and we've shot down every other idea. So I think that's the way to go, would be a new projector, because it can make sense. It would be an upgrade over what you have right now.
What about the gray screen during the night, though? You're okay with that?
I think that's fine. I think that's fine because he still does have
needs it
light
during the day,
reflecting
for sure.
around. He's got a white floor as well. I mean, everything here is reflective. So having that ambient light rejecting screen at night, I'm not opposed to that at all.
All right, well there you go. Buy that. Yeah. I mean,
and get some printed panels. That's
Fred. Now, Fred drew up some very detailed plans for his theater that incorporate our last round of suggestions that we had for him. Okay,
so he was the one who had the fireplace that's being taken out. And where originally they wanted seating around the fireplace, but they've discovered they don't use that fireplace. They're getting rid of it and turning it into a theater.
Let me tell you something about fireplaces, dude. They're like a complete waste of space. I mean, I agree with you 100%. There's fireplaces in houses all over Florida, and I just look at them like, who lights that thing? Yep. Who lights it? I had a fireplace in my house in Jacksonville. I lived there for 5 years. I think we lit it 3 times. And every single time I was afraid I was going to burn the house down because who knows what was going. I was like, okay, if the smoke starts billowing back into the house, everybody run. We'll call the police or fire department. Anyways, as a side, he used Open Office Draw to make these plans. So if you're looking at them on YouTube, you can see that. And he was very impressed with it in case anyone was looking for a free software to help them plan their theater. So this is Open Office, which is like an alternative to Word.
Yeah.
It's free. There's also LibreOffice. This Open Office was bought by like Sun Systems or something.
Yeah.
And then the same people that made Open Office went and made LibreOffice, which is what I sometimes use on my computers. All right. His top concern is placement of his front, left, right EMP Tech tower speakers. He really doesn't want the bookcases to be physically blocked by speakers, so placing the towers just to the insides of the bookcases means they'd be about 18 degrees to the left and right of center rather than Dolby's recommended 22 to 30 degrees. How bad is this really? And should he have any concerns about the rear ports being quite close to the corners created by the sides of the bookcases, meaning the front wall? So let me look here.
Yeah. So he's going to have a drop-down acoustically transparent screen.
Right.
That's we talk about this a little bit later, but it's going to be filling more than a 45-degree field of view for him. So this means all 3 of his speakers will actually be physically behind that screen.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I think it's completely fine. I mean, you got to live life on life's terms sometimes. If you were building this theater from scratch, designing it from scratch, you wouldn't put them 18 degrees, you put them 22.5 to 30, but I think you're fine. I'm really not overly concerned.
Mine are a little bit too far apart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mine are a little bit too far apart, and it kind of drives me nuts. But if I want to see all of the screen, that's what I got to do.
Yeah.
So what do? Do I tear down my house? Do I move my chair further back so that I get the right, field? I mean, the right angles? No,
it's not as though you're putting them 2 feet apart or something, right. They're still wide enough apart you're going to be able to tell left from right, and maybe you just don't toe them in. Maybe they just fire straight out now instead of being towed in. It could be as simple as that. So I think you're fine. I'll talk a little bit more about worrying about the corner and the port thing later because he asked about what to do with his front walls. So we'll talk about it.
he could put some insulation on the front wall in between the bookshelves. So he asked if this would be beneficial for his front, left, right, and center speakers. And if so, how thick should the insulation be and how much of the front wall should he cover?
That's beneficial for everything.
It is really beneficial. It's beneficial for the whole room. Yeah. So if you whatever you can put up there, because basically all of your speakers will be essentially in front of this wall, right? Yeah. I mean, because the book he wants them inside of the bookshelves. So can you just go ahead and do the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, could you literally just get normal ceiling insulation, like some Roxol insulation, because that'd be easy to work with, holds its shape nicely and isn't itchy. Just get some your standard one that would fill a 3.5 inch, a standard 2x4, right?
Yep.
Line that whole front wall and the sides of the bookcases and throw some fabric over it. Could you do that? I mean, if not, just get some regular standard 4-inch thick absorption panels and put them all across that front wall. That's what I would do.
Floor to ceiling. If you do the whole thing, do the whole thing. Yeah. That's what I would do as well. All right, I have to scroll back down. And would it be beneficial? Absolutely. It would benefit everything in your room. Any sound that hits that is going to be absorbed by it, and at least some portion of it will be.
And if there are any sounds that are going back and forth between the bookcase or whatever, knocks all that down. So just gets rid of
the port noise that you just asked about. Any sounds coming out of the ports. If you're worried about those bouncing off the wall, well, they won't be bouncing off the wall too much because you're going to fill it with insulation.
Yep.
So the double doors on the back wall dictate that surround back speakers would have to be mounted up high. He could fit a pair of SVS Prime elevation speakers, which would then be angled down in the seats. Is that a good idea, or should he forego the surround back speakers if they can't be closer to ear level? I'm scrolling back up again so I can see here. Why can't we just make these height speakers?
Well, because he's going to have in ceilings, and we're going to actually talk about that, if not next, coming up, Atmos speakers. I mean, I'm in favor of this. This is exactly what the Prime Elevations were designed for, with situations like this where you can't necessarily have it at ear level, but they have this angled feature built in. Surround back speakers, in my opinion, ought to be elevated anyway.
They have to be elevated some. They got to have the top of the couches, and couches are always a lot higher than people give them credit for. So yes, they should be elevated. Do they need to be all the way to the ceiling? I don't know, but
again, live life on life's terms. You got to clear that doorway. I'm assuming these doors sort of like open, so the speakers have to be above where the door is going to fold open, right? So I think that's fine.
Does he have all these measurements in inches? What is 235.5 inches about?
Where are you seeing that number?
Well, that's how long his room is. I want to know how long his room is.
Yeah.
I didn't write this thing. I want it in feet. I need it in feet. It looks like it. I mean, it's feet. 235.5. I'm not doing the math. I can't do it.
Okay. Here, let me. So 19 and a half, 20 feet. Yeah.
All right. So 20 feet.
And the little happy faces where he's going to be sitting. I mean, we talked about this. He was asking previously if he should go for surround back speakers, and I was like, yeah, you got enough room. You got 7 feet behind you in this room.
I'm not really understanding. So they're pocket doors? Is that what it is? Or they're sliding doors?
I can't remember. We saw them before, but he's got these double doorways, so he's like got to put the speakers above the doors.
Above the doors, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't look like it in the picture. That's why I'm a little confused. But it looks like they're flanking the door anyway. So what's the big deal? But that's
like I say, I think they might swing open, right? So the doors. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if that's all you can do, that's fine too. I mean,
I think that's totally fine. It affects his next question about Atmos speakers, but I think that's totally fine.
And this is where I'm running into issues here. So he positioned the Atmos speakers at the recommended 45-degree elevation angles for the top fronts and top rears. However, if he keeps them in line with the front left-right speakers, they seem a bit narrow and close together. If he installs the prime elevation surround back speakers, the top rears seem like they'd be physically close to the surround backs. We had another listener, Mitch, ask a similar question regarding what to do when when the recommended Dolby Atmos positions end up being physically close to where the surround back speakers are located. So would it make more sense to opt for top, middles, and front height positions, and maybe have the Atmos speakers wider apart than the front left and right? I don't see any reason why you have to have them wider apart. I mean, you could cheat them out. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but again, the answer we've been giving is that imagine your front, left, and right speakers were at the 22 to 30 degree marks that Dolby recommends, and then line up your Atmos speakers with that overhead. Even though that isn't where your speakers are actually going to be, it's still in line with where Dolby would have put them if you could have. So having them a little wider apart, absolutely fine.
I kind of like the idea of going with front heights and top middles. I think they're a little bit too close to be top rears. I just think they're too close.
Yeah, so the way I answered Mitch, and this will apply to Fred's as well. So the sounds that get sent to the ceiling speakers, the Atmos speakers, you got 10 possible positions, 5 pairs. So you got front heights, top fronts, top middles, top rears, and rear heights. The sounds that get sent to those are completely independent of the sounds that get sent to any of the, ear level, floor level speakers. They are completely separate things. So the way I come at it is, if you were to play on Dolby's website, they have a channel identification thing.
Right.
It sends a sound out of each speaker individually, and they have it in a 9.1.6 configuration in those channel identifiers, and you can play that out to hear the speaker. So you will not get sounds bleeding between the surround back and the top rears or something like that. They're going to be independent. However, the flip side of that is, when those channel identifiers are played, even though they're completely independent and they're in one speaker and one speaker only when they're played, behind you, we're not that great at identifying pinpoint where a sound is coming from. So when you hear the thing that says, this is the surround back left channel, and you hear that and it's fine, it's totally distinct, and then you hear the one that says, this is the top rear left channel, you're going to go, well,
that sounds like it's coming from the same place.
It's coming from pretty close to the same place, exactly. So you have this thing of, if there's a sound that's mixed and it's mixed into a location that's close to where the top rear speaker ought to be, it's only going to come out of the top rear speaker. It's not literally going to also be played out of the surround back speaker. Those things will be independent. However, the effect is that something that is played out of surround back left and then something else that's played out of top rear left end up sounding kind of redundant. So you gotta
have like 4 or 5 feet between the speakers, I think. If you think about the shape of your ears, this makes sense. You're very good at identifying sounds in front of you. Behind you, you're very good at identifying there's something behind you, but not necessarily where, because there's...
Which is why we turn around to look where it came from, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's just instinct. So THX is in agreement with me. I'm not the only one saying this. They're like, yes, the sounds are independent, but if you get yourself 4 or 5 feet physically between the speaker locations, you have a much better time of it doesn't sound redundant anymore. It's like, oh, that sound is clearly coming from a different location than that other sound. So if you went with top middles, and top middles don't have to be directly overhead, they can go to 100 degrees elevation, right? So instead of 9 degrees elevation, it could be 100 degrees elevation. So you could have them a little bit behind you, or just directly overhead, straight above where your couch is and to either side. And then, front heights, which would be, those can stay at 45 degrees in front of you. They don't have to go any farther ahead. 45 degrees in front of you is perfectly acceptable for front heights. So, I would switch what you had planned as top rears to being top middles instead. I would do that.
So you tried our advice of having the seats a third of the room's length from the back wall and having a 120-inch screen, just using a white cotton sheet to test it out. That would come down from the ceiling 3 feet from the front wall. This created a 46.3-degree field of view that he and his wife agreed looked perfect. They're also very happy with the brightness, even with on this white cotton sheet. So is there any reason to go with anything other than 1.0 gain screen? Nope.
It's going to be brighter than the white sheet.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be brighter than that, for sure. And this is a light-controlled room anyway.
It's a light-controlled room, yep.
You're good. So he's been looking at both the Elite Screen's Saker tab tension with their Acoustic Pro UHD material and the Seymour AV tab tension screen with their Center Stage XD material. The Seymour screen is more expensive, but according to AccuCal report, it performs a bit better than the Elite Screen's option. Does that mean that the Seymour AV screen is worth the extra money? Any other option he should be considering? It remind me about the Elites, because that's the one.
The Acoustic Pro UHD, it's got a little bit of texture to it. Versus, the Seymour.
The thing about the Seymour AV is like you almost be on top of the thing and you're never going to see any texture, right?
Yeah, there's no texture, there's no color shift at all. And when they say it's a 1.0 gain screen, it's a 1.0 gain screen. It's not, something lower than 1.0, which a lot of others are. The Elite, it's got a little bit of a color shift to it. It's not quite as bright. It's got a little bit of a texture, right? So it's all these things that are like, if that's all you can afford, it's not like you're getting a bad screen by any means. You can get a little bit nicer screen, but you have to pay more for it with the Seymour. This is really tough to say. Can you easily afford the Seymour? Is that something where you're going to be like, $400 extra? No problem. Because it is a slightly nicer screen, and you might have this set up for a very long time. So over time, you can say, yeah, that cost was worth it. it's not something where I'm going to go buy, do whatever you can to avoid the Elite. It's not that at all. It's like the Seymour's a little bit nicer. You'll have to decide if that's worth the several $100s more. It's very tough to say.
So he says the Elite screens comes with more black drop at the top of the screen than he actually needs. So is it possible to set how much the screen rolls down when you press the remote so that stops at the desired level? I don't know about Elite screens, but most of the screens I've dealt with do. I mean, you set those things.
Yeah, I mean, I know for certain it can be set at the factory. So if you call ahead and say, this is how much I needed to drop, that's how much it'll drop. Any of the motorized screen manufacturers can do that for you.
But most of them have like a thing, like a memory. Like you lower it, and you stop it, and then you press it to go back up, and it remembers that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that easy.
Yeah,
so you might give them a call or something like that to figure out what
I would
it
just
is.
confirm, because the truth is I'm not 100% on the Elite one. I know for sure they can do it at the factory, but I'm not 100% if you can user set the memory to how far it drops. I think you can, but that's as simple as getting in touch with Elite to confirm. Right. But either way, it can be done. It's just whether you can easily do it yourself. He asked if there were any other screens you should consider for an acoustically transparent. There is IllunaVision. They are more easily found in Canada, but they do ship direct to customer in the States. I don't know where their price point would end up falling for you, because there's going to be the shipping costs going across the border and all that. Normally, they're a little bit less expensive for Seymour. If you're in Canada, they're less expensive than shipping it across the border from Seymour into Canada. So IllunaVision can be a nice option for Canadian customers, but you can get in touch with it because they can just give you a quote. You haven't committed to buying it or anything like that. So you can get a quote from them if you want to look into that. The Seymour is still the slightly nicer, texture-free, zero color shift screen. So if you can afford that one, that's a nice way to go.
Greg is a dedicated 7.2 channel theater with 7 seats. It's got a row of 3 and a second row of 4. A Marantz SR5010 receiver, Emotiva A500 external amp, 120-inch acoustically transparent silver ticket screen. We're just talking about that.
Yeah.
Speakercraft in-wall side surrounds and KEF speakers in all the other positions. He's got Q500 towers, Q200 center, and an E301 surround backs. Excuse me. The acoustically transparent screen has 3 feet of space behind it. Wow, this sounds really similar to those other. This is why I got these two questions completely messed up in my head.
They're similar. Well, recommendations have been given out for years now. It seems people are following them. So
it seems that way. 3 feet of space behind it. The room is carpeted, and the walls and the corners treated with acoustic panels. He's been happy with this setup, but he's got a case of upgrade-itis, and that hasn't been interesting to trying some sort of planar tweeter. Now, if you're seeing these pictures online, you will see this guy has a very nice home theater.
I'm loving that black ceiling. I know you might hate it, but I'm loving it.
Aren't those panels up there? I think those are panels up there. Aren't those panels?
I think this is an attic space.
It's definitely attic space. So it's kind of like in the A-frame part of the thing. So it's an odd shape, but it's he's done very well with it. So it's got leather recliners. It looks really good.
This is an awesome looking home. Like this would be a lovely place to go in and watch a movie, don't you think?
Yes, I bet that would be fantastic. So he asked, to begin with, are ribbon tweeters superior to dome tweeters, and is there one type of ribbon tweeter that's superior to all other types? Folded ribbon, true ribbons, quasi ribbons, etc. You will never get me to say that one driver type is hands down superior to any other driver type, because you can take that great driver and put it in a crappy design and end up with a crappy speaker. So yes, I mean, ribbon tweeters are utilizing a material that's extremely light.
Yes.
And it's very easy to start and stop. Whereas, I mean, we're not talking like, dome tweeters are all that heavy, but they are heavier.
They tend to have more mass. That's just
than these things are. So does that mean that ribbon tweeters are always superior? No. There's fantastic sounding dome tweeters out there.
Oh, yes.
And that's why we still see some of the top end manufacturers, high end spending, you can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on their speakers, still using dome tweeters. They still do.
I mean, the common characteristics of a ribbon tweeter is that it uses a larger surface area.
Right.
and moves exceedingly little. So you just have to displace the air. One way to do that is to have a small surface area and move it back and forth a lot. Another way is to have a large surface area and move it back and forth a little. You'll end up with the same amount of air displacement. So ribbons do it by having large surface area but moving very little, and they're also exceedingly low in mass. So normally their transient response can be faster than most domes. They just have less mass and they have less excursion. That almost always translates to better transient response. The downside can be that because they have this larger surface area, at least in one direction, they're going to have narrower dispersion. It's almost always that you have a tall, skinny ribbon. So that means the vertical dispersion gets limited. That's a characteristic. It might be a positive in some cases. It might be a negative in others, but that seems to be a characteristic. Also, because they move very little, there is usually an upper limit on just how flat out loud they can play.
Right.
If you get a larger ribbon, it can play louder. Simple as that. But yeah, there are some limits. So the folded ribbon design has an advantage of, because it's folded, it has even more surface area than a true ribbon or a quasi-ribbon of the same vertical size or horizontal size, because it's folded, it's pleated back and forth. That means normally a lot of folded ribbons can handle more power. They can play louder.
Yeah.
But they have this odd shape that's squeezing the air out, so they tend to have very limited dispersion. It usually beams out almost laser-like. The quasi-ribbon means that you have a ribbon on top of some sort of other surface that actually carries the electrical current. A true ribbon, the electrical current is sent through the surface that produces the sound. They're one and the same. A quasi-ribbon means there's some other surface, some substrate that carries the electrical signal, and then the ribbon is on top of that. That means higher mass. So the true ribbon tends to be the one with the fastest transient response possible. The folded ribbon tweeter gives the advantage of higher output. But I mean, it all, like Tom said, it all comes down to the design of the speaker. You can have a folded ribbon speaker that sounds like crap, and there are some. So yeah, just having that type of tweeter design doesn't guarantee you anything.
But he wants to hear them, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely, give him an audition by all means.
He says many of the brands that offer bookshelf speakers with some sort of ribbon tweeter also offer a center speaker where the ribbon tweeter is above a mid-range driver. In this setup, would it be better to go with 3 identical bookshelf speakers up front, or should he consider 3 of the center speakers as LCRs, or left, center, right? Or just go with the traditional configuration of a pair of bookshelf speakers with 1 horizontal center? Well, if you have the option of having identical speakers all the way across the front of your room, you should just go with that. That's generally considered to be a very good option.
And it seems like they're all going to be behind his acoustically transparent screen.
So you might as well.
I'm not 100% on that, but it seems like
why wouldn't they all be back there? I mean,
yeah,
it looks
gives
like
me
they're
a
all there
little
now.
bit of pause of using 3 horizontal centers. Not that that's going to sound bad in any way. It's just that your front, left, and right end up being, a little bit closer together as a result, right? Or at least where the tweeters are at, because
unless he's stacking them vertically.
Yeah, I don't think that would be the intention. It doesn't look like your seating distance is tremendously long. I
feel like there's the 2 speakers, we can't really see them, but they're flanking. There's 2 that are flanking the screen, and then there's one behind.
Yeah, but I'm thinking that 3 bookshelf speakers at the front of this room should be absolutely fine.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's what I would go for here.
So he's considering the Emotiva Airmotive speakers, the Golden Ear Aeons, and the Martin Logan Motion series speakers. Do we have any strong preference of any of these 3 above the other 2? Well, you should audition the Golden Ear and the Martin Logans, because you can do that.
Yes.
I don't remember hearing much about the Airmotive speakers that was super duper positive.
Yeah, Audioholics kind of reviewed them, and they're like, they weren't super gung ho about them. I think
it's just about as much as you can say for about an advertiser, to be honest with you.
I think it was Sounded Vision measured them, and it wasn't exactly linear response coming out of those things.
But then again, you're probably not going to get a linear response out of Golden Ear or Martin Logan either.
I would say that the Golden Ear, you must audition them before you commit to buying them, because they aren't aiming for a completely linear neutral sound, and that's fine. I'm fine with that, because they're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. They're like, this is our sound. If you love it, you love it. If you hate it, you hate it. That's fine. We're doing what we do, and I got zero problem with that. But you must audition them first. You might love them, so great. The Martin Logans, I'm not sure. I've heard the on-wall motion series, the ones that can be mounted to the wall, but I don't know if I've heard
heard those too. Yeah.
the bookshelves. But I know that Justin, who tried them out, he absolutely loved them. So that's one person who's heard a lot of speakers because he's auditioned like everything under the sun because that's just what he likes to do, which is cool. But he absolutely loved them. So that's one thumbs up from somebody. Again, they should be available in a store where you can audition them. I think
my guess is that
out.
if you could hear all three of these speakers, you'd probably end up with the Martin Logans. But that's from the three that you've given us here. That's probably
where I would end up.
I would end up
for what out of these three. Yep.
He says any other ribbon tweeter speakers he should be considering. The budget can be up to $500 per speaker, but lower would be nice.
And that's the rub.
There's your rub there, buddy, because ribbon tweeters are expensive, and they are hot as well. A lot of people are excited about them, which means they can charge more for them. So,
because if you're looking at Legacy Audio, who also uses the folded ribbon, expensive.
Yep.
Ascend Acoustics with the Sierra series that have the RAL ribbon tweeters.
Those are expensive too.
More expensive than this budget, more expensive than $1,000 a pair. You're looking at $1,500 a pair basically for the Sierra 2s. And then Philharmonic Audio, which again uses RAL ribbon tweeters. They have some that are a little bit less expensive, but it's still over $1,000 a pair. Still, $1,150 or $1,200 a pair. So yeah, doing it for this budget is the challenge.
Yeah.
And
used,
possibly,
used?
But his
Keep your
next
eyes open.
question also. I want to talk about the whole thing together. So
right. He says KEF has released their newly updated Q series, and of course there are many other speakers out there that use dome tweeters. Should he stop worrying about ribbon tweeters and look at other speakers, given that he already has in his budget for upgrading? And the answer to that question is 100% yes. You should stop worrying about any of this and just go listen and just go listen to speakers.
Right.
No, I'm being very honest here.
Yeah,
just stop worrying about what type of speaker you want to own. And start going out there and listening to a bunch of different speakers at every possible shop you can, in every way that you can. It's like listening to a 14-year-old talk about what car he's going to drive. You have no idea. You've never driven a car,
right.
Or you've only been in the cars that I have taken you in, and that's all you know. You know your speakers and the ones that you've had, and the experience that you've had, and now you're like, I want to upgrade. I'm going to get something that's got a ribbon tweeter in it. Like, well, why are you limiting yourself to that? You could find a speaker that you absolutely love that has an aluminum dome tweeter in it,
right.
And what are you going to say to yourself? Well, I can't have it. It doesn't have a ribbon tweeter. That's ridiculous. Don't limit yourself.
The good news is you have good speakers.
Yeah.
The KEF Q series, regardless of whether the ones that just got replaced or the brand new models, you have good speakers, which means getting something that I would genuinely call an upgrade, like just across the board, this I would call an upgrade, means spending more than $500 per speaker, in my opinion.
Probably.
You can absolutely get something that sounds different than what you already have, and you might
get something that sounds good too. It just might not be that much better.
Yeah, I mean, you might like the different more than your current speakers, which to you would be the upgrade. But I don't feel confident saying, go out and buy a speaker that's $1,000 per pair, and you're guaranteed to think that this is an upgrade in every way versus your KEF Q series speakers, because those are already good speakers. What I like about them is you have to spend a lot more to get something that I would say, yep, you got yourself an upgrade to the KEF Q series. So
this is what I want you to do. I want you to go out and find a speaker worth saving for.
Yeah.
That's what I want you to do. I don't want you to look at any price tags. I want you to go out and find a speaker that's absolutely where you're like, this is it. This is the speaker. I want to own this speaker. How much does it cost? And then start saving your pennies. Because I think that's where you're at right now. You've got an enviable home theater on every single front here. You've got great speakers. You've got a beautiful setup, classy looking design, comfortable chairs, acoustically transparent screen,
and high value
on top of all of that. And you're like, I want to upgrade. Well, dude, you're going to have to shell out some. You did good.
Yeah.
You're not one of these people come here like, I've got a new OLED and these, fancy seats and blah, blah, blah. and I've got this Onkyo home theater in the box speakers. Which should I upgrade? I'm like, oh well, we could fix this. You're not in that camp. You are in the camp of, I have done my research, I've done my homework, I've gotten the best value I can for my budget, but I want to do something new. Well, you've unfortunately already done everything good, right? So now you have to really save to get something that's going to be significant.
I mean, by all means, go listen to the Golden Ears, go listen to the Martin Logans. By all means, do that, because you might just fall in love with them. It could be the case.
Could be, but I would highly recommend that you just don't look at price tags and you just start listening to everything you can. This is your new hobby. I mean, it's already been your hobby, but
you could consider, bring in a pair of Ascend Sierra 2s just to audition them. You might end up sending them back. You'd be out the shipping cost, but that's a relatively low cost for the experience of, hearing them in your own house, because that's a really, really nice ribbon tweeter speaker. It's more expensive than what you wanted to spend, but if you hear that and you go, oh, that is clearly something that I think is worth saving up for, then now at least you have that idea, right?
Right. It's worth it. Neil has been using some ScanSonic tower speakers in the room that is 24 feet wide, 13 feet long, and 9 feet high. He's looking to downsize his setup a bit, so he wants bookshelf speakers. He does plan to pair them with a subwoofer or two. Yep. So deep bass extension from the bookshelf speakers is not a concern. It never was. Neither was it a concern from your tower speakers, so let's just go on. His two top candidates are the Send Acoustic Sierra 2s and the Philharmonic BMR Philharmonitor. I got that one out right without stumbling over it. I feel very proud of myself. The price difference is not significant to Neil. It's like somewhere, they're about the same, about $1,500 a pair. Let's just say that, depending on the cabinet options and the finishing and all that stuff. Yeah. So what really separates them is that the Sierra 2s is a two-way design, while the Philharmonitor is a three-way design. Said it right twice. Neil really likes the idea of a dedicated mid-range driver, but we've talked a lot about the Sierra 2 on the podcast, so which one should he buy? You should get them both and send back the one you don't like.
Yeah, because I can't tell you that, you are guaranteed to prefer this one over the other one.
This is the situation where the only answer is your ears. I hate to say it, but it's true. And you're going to be out the shipping cost, and you're just going to have to live with that. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is.
Almost surely more similar than different. I wanted to address the two-way versus the three-way design.
We'll talk about that. Yeah. But you have two options. The first option is buy them both, send back the one you don't like, and be ready to be sitting there looking at them both, going, "Dave, I don't know, I kind of like them both."
Which one costs less to ship back?
Yeah, you might end up making the decision. So, is there any other reason that you can come up with, any other criteria that could push one over the top of the other?
Physical size, the finish option.
Options. Yeah. Maybe it saves you $100 so the shipping ends up being free for one of them or something like that.
Right.
Something like that. Because I think this could literally be, like, I used to do this all the time to myself. I do this to myself when I had two things I wanted and I didn't know which one I wanted. I would take and flip a coin and say, okay, the heads is this one and tails is the other one. I'd flip the coin, I'd see, and if I was disappointed, then I would buy the other one.
That's right.
And if I was excited, I bought the one. Because sometimes you don't really know which one you really want until you do that.
Well, it seems like he has a leaning. He has a leaning. But yeah, I wanted to address this two-way versus three-way design because this is actually something that David Fabricant at Ascend Acoustics has talked about quite a bit on the forum, because there are lots of people who have said, why don't you have a three-way bookshelf at Ascend? Why don't you take the Sierra 2 design but add a bass woofer to it and a larger cabinet and have a three-way bookshelf? So he's addressed that. So what he's mostly said, so both of them use a very similar RAL ribbon tweeter. It's the thinner, narrower, I think they call it the 7010. So it's 70 millimeters tall, 10 millimeters wide. And both of them are like sort of customized for their own designs, but they're sort of based on that design. So it's very similar tweeters between the two of them. But it really does not play very low. It has to be crossed over quite high to the mid-range driver. It has to be crossed over, I think it's above 3,500 hertz, which is, most are crossed at 2 kilohertz. This one's like 3.5 kilohertz. So it has to be crossed over quite high. That presents somewhat of a challenge. You have to get a mid-range driver that can nicely play that high and blend well with it. And then that means, okay, how do you get down into the bass? So do you have one driver that can do both of these things? Or do you try to get one mid-range driver and then a bass driver? So Dave's approach with the Sierra 2 and ending up with a two-way design was he went to C's, He had a bespoke, highly custom-made mid-range woofer designed specifically for that speaker that could play both high and low while fitting the physical constraints and having similar efficiency to the RAL ribbon tweeter. It was a ton of work that went into designing that mid-range driver. No other speaker has it. It's only that one speaker, and that's the way he came at it. Now, he was saying, why didn't he just go with a mid-range driver and a bass woofer? He says, well, the issue is that ribbon tweeter is actually efficient enough that to have similar output from the bass drivers either means a pretty large bass driver, which then you now have a wider cabinet, which means you've ruined some of the horizontal dispersion of that extremely skinny ribbon tweeter, because you just have a wider cabinet, more cabinet diffraction, that type of thing, or dual bass drivers, just to get the surface area and the efficiency to match the output of the tweeter, at which point you have a tower speaker. So he's like, I can absolutely put this ribbon into our tower speaker design, but what's the point? I either have a larger bookshelf speaker that I have to make less efficient, lower in output, and have narrower horizontal dispersion, or I end up with a tower anyway. That was Dave's decision. Over at Philharmonic, they did the thing you have to do. They went with a larger 7-inch woofer, and they decreased the sensitivity and the output capability because you had to. It's now limited by the bass driver as opposed to being limited by the tweeter. So you'll notice that the Philharmonic, this three-way design, actually has lower sensitivity and lower impedance on top of it, which means that you need more amplifier power to get to the same output level. That's what it means from the larger speaker, which is counterintuitive, right? So there's no free lunch here, right?
That's a really ugly speaker. I'm just going to say that. I don't like the Philharmonic. What is that? That driver is weird.
Yeah, it's a strange. It's a interesting mid-range driver. Yeah, but it's because it has to play to this higher frequency that a lot of mid-range drivers don't play to. So there's no free lunch here, and it's the presence of a mid-range driver does not mean the speaker is better. No. It's like saying a folded ribbon tweeter does not mean it's better than a dome. Now, Dennis Murphy, who designs the Philharmonic speakers, excellent speaker designer. He knows what he's doing. He's done the things you need to do to make this design work. But there were some compromises that had to be made. It had to be lower sensitivity. It has to have lower output for a given amount of wattage. That's what you had to do to make that design work. And you end up with this larger speaker as a result. That one is not right and one is not wrong. They're just like, different. This is what we're designing. This is what you end up with.
So, Martin, basically, flip a coin, okay?
And if you're like, I just really want the 3 then get it. It's going to sound great. The Philharmonic makes great speakers.
Yeah. Flip the coin. That is really the solution here. We just saved you a bunch of money. Martin has an Epson 5030 UB projector and a screen that is 105 inches wide. It's 105 inches wide. It's not diagonal. That's the information he gave. So that's
okay.
That's odd. The projector is roughly 16 feet from the screen. The top edge of the screen is 18 inches from the ceiling. He would like to sit the projector on a high shelf rather than ceiling mounting it. The high shelf would be 10 inches from the ceiling. So it's going to be 8 inches above the screen.
The top edge of the screen. That's correct.
He's pretty sure that the Epson's 5030 large lens shift range, that he could use the Epson's a large lens shift range to fit the image onto a screen. What's not clear to him from the manual is whether he needs to flip his projector upside down or not. Hold on a second. Hold on. All right, just checking something. Fit the image clear since it's on the shelf, he'd rather keep the projector right side up if possible. Can we clarify the situation for him? Yeah, okay. So I have an Epson.
You do, yeah.
And I'm not using. I'm not using. It's not that one, but I am not using the Epson right now. But it will easily sit above your screen quite a bit, like easily 8 inches. I think is well within that range, because I was using a pull-up screen that was pulling up from the ground, and it was only maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet of black on the bottom, and it was at the end of the range. And my projector is not 10. It is a foot down from the ceiling. So there was a lot of lens shifting going on, and I didn't have to do any sort of keystoning or anything. So I gotta believe that the answer to this question is yes. This will be a problem.
Yeah, the short answer is you're fine. You can do what you want to do. Whether this is a 16:9 or a 2.35 to 1, because I thought since he gave it in the width of the screen, maybe it's a 2.35 to 1. But either way, actually, if it's a 2.35 to 1 screen, it's even less of a concern. So Martin, I do not blame you one little bit for
Oh,
being
I know.
confused by that. The way they describe it in the manual, I'm like, why, of all the ways to describe the lens shift range, why would you choose this method? It is strange. But what they do, they show you this kind of diagram, and they give you they give you the number, which is what, like, they label it as like superset 1. Here's what the height of the screen can be, and then here's the distance between the middle of the lens and the bottom of the screen if you shift it all the way up. And then here's the distance from the middle of the lens to the bottom of the screen if you shift it all the way down. And I'm like, why? Just, even percentages is even easier than this. Or just give a diagram. Like, just draw a diagram. But they give you that, and then they give you a chart, and you look up your screen size versus these 3 different numbers, height of the screen versus middle to the bottom if you shift it up, middle to the bottom if you shift it down. It's a terrible way of describing it. But the bottom line is this. If you have a screen that is 105 inches wide, that translates to the image coming out of the projector, because the image coming out of the projector is always 16 by 9. That's just what the panel is. So if it's 105 inches wide, it's 59 inches tall. It's 120 degrees diagonal, 16 by 9. That's what the image is. And the chart says if you have a 120-inch screen, the bottom of edge of the screen can be 26.8 inches higher than the center of the lens if you shift it all the way up, or the bottom of the screen can be 85.8 inches lower than the middle of the lens if you shift it all the way down. Now, guess what? That's exactly the same, up or down, which they also could have just said.
They could have just said that.
Move it up or move it down. It's the same amount of lens shift. But no, they give it to you.
So you could be 26.5 inches above the top of the screen.
It can be 26.5 inches, whether it's upside down or right side up. Doesn't make any difference. It's got the same amount of lens shift up and down.
So don't worry about it.
Well, it does have horizontal lens shift too, just not as much. Okay. Yeah. So bottom line, you got 26.8 inches to play with. You need at most 18, but really 8. And if it was a 2.35 to 1 screen, remember that the edge of the image is now actually even higher and closer to your projector. And then there's 7.2 inches of black bar above that. So it's even less of a, it's basically even with the lens at that point. So yeah, short answer is you're fine. Keep it right side up. Totally got the lens shift to spare.
Yeah. Greg is moving to a new house in a new state for his new job. His wife is also pregnant with twins who are due in about 3 months. Do it now. Get the home theater now.
What Greg wants to do. He's like, I want to do this now and get it. It's just cheap and it's done, and we're probably not going to be able to touch it for the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, you'll figure out a way. The new house already has a theater room with existing equipment included in the sale. Greg wants some help making the most of what's already there and what he already owns, while also keeping an eye towards future plans, and spending a maximum of about $800 for anything we worth is buying right away. The room is roughly 10.5 feet wide, 17.25 feet long, and it has a drop ceiling, so it's only 86 inches high. There's a pocket door on the left wall, close to the front door, and close to the front. Mm-hmm. And there's a 2-foot wide vertical bulkhead on the right front wall, on the right there. So it's on the front wall, but it's on the right side of the room.
That's right.
Right up in that corner there. The room is carpeted and has 2 rows of seats with the back row close to the back wall on the riser. Greg figures the front row would be the primary row and is roughly 11 feet from the front wall. This sounds remarkably a lot like my theater, to be honest with you, except for that bulkhead thingy there. All right, so we're seeing some pictures here, and I don't have a drop ceiling either. So, yeah, there's that. That looks nice. I like it. Yeah. Looks comfy. Looks homey. The surround speaker's too far back. The speakers that are already installed are a 7.1 Onkyo HTSR 800 home theater in the box. Yeah, well, we can fix something right there. Greg already owns some Polk RTI series speakers that we use as front 3s instead of the Onkyo speakers. He also has an HSU STF2. The Onkyo system included a 10-inch sub that actually isn't too bad, but it's not as good as STF2. Should you still try to set them up as dual subs, or will the Onkyo sub just drag the system down?
So this actually is that Onkyo, was it SKW something 03 or whatever? I can't remember the model number off the top of my head, but it is that Onkyo 10-inch sub that was like my favorite thing for $100. Because sometimes people are like, I need a sub, I got $100 to spend. I'm like, get that Onkyo. Because it actually is a pretty decent little 10-inch sub. It doesn't play as low as the STF2. It doesn't play as loud, but it isn't a piece of garbage like most home theater in a box subs are. Yeah, I mean, this is not a huge room. I mean, the thing is,
Throw it in the corner and pray.
if you try it and it doesn't sound great, stop using it. Like, that doesn't cost you any extra money, right? I mean, the thing is, there will be some where I'm just like, don't bother. Just try to get rid of it as soon as possible. This one, I'm like, I think it's worth giving it a shot because it's not going to cost you money to just audition the thing. And if it isn't good, then get rid of it.
I would definitely... Okay, I agree with Rob. You should do it. You should try it.
Yeah.
I also think you should try it without that sub.
Yes. Yeah.
You need to do both. Don't just put it on and say, "Hey, I got it on. It sounds pretty good. I'm good to go. I'm good. I'm done." I would try both because you could find that the lone HSU is just going to sound better by itself.
Yeah, because trying it is free. It's a little bit of time, but it's free. So yeah, give it a try.
He says, would it be worthwhile to get a measurement microphone and a mini DSP right away? Could you use this multi-sub optimization software to get maximum performance out of the Onkyo and HSU subs together? No.
That multi-sub optimization software we talked about is for 3 or more subs.
Yeah, in irregularly shaped rooms. You've got one little bump in your room. You know, this is not a room that you have to worry. You're going to throw both these subs in opposing corners, and you're going to be done with it. You're going to be done. So you don't need any of that.
No, I wouldn't recommend spending the limited money that you have on those items. It's unnecessary.
Since at the moment, the existing projector in Epson Home Cinema 1040 is just projecting onto the white wall, so Greg figures a proper screen might be the best use of his available funds. That might allow him to center the image rather than have it shifted over to the left the way it is now because of the bulkhead in the front right corner. Do we agree that the screen would be a good purchase? And if so, how could he mount it? Could he get a fixed frame and suspend it from a drop tile ceiling? Should he get a roll-down screen? Not with the money you've got. I don't think I would get a roll-down screen. Plus,
nope.
Roll down screens, you're rolling it down over what? I mean, there's nothing here to roll it down over the top of. If you're rolling it down over the top of a flat panel or something, or a window, or anything, it's just a white wall up there. I mean, what are you going to do? You just put the fixed frame. So what you can do is essentially, depending on how wide that screen is that you end up getting, you're just going to build attached to your wall a couple of points that stick out just as far as your bulkhead on the right side, and you're going to attach it to the bulkhead, and you're going to attach it to that.
Yeah, you make it as simple as some 2x4s because they're going to be covered by the screen.
They're going to be covered anyways behind the screen. It's not going to make any difference, and that's what you're going to do.
I was even thinking of, because it's not terribly expensive to do, and this is something in homemade, is just make like a false wall that essentially makes it flush with where the bulkhead is.
Yeah, all the way across.
And that way you could throw some insulation in there.
I think it's a great idea.
Cover. Then you can cover the whole front wall with just some black fabric. Again, that doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg.
Or try to match the color of the wall, that paint that's in there too, I guess. If you do that.
But I mean, I would just, I'd put up, just stick framing that ends up being flush with that bulkhead. I think there's outlets on the left there, so just frame around that. Right, just frame around the outlets on the wall because your screen isn't going to go as low as the electrical outlets are on that wall.
Right.
So just frame around that. But yeah, stick framing, put some insulation in there in that front wall. That's great. Now you've just, bettered the acoustics in this room and fabric over that front wall. And that's what I would do. And now you have the stick framing to attach your fixed frame screen to.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I do think a screen in here is a good idea because I don't like the off-center weirdness and that shrinks the available screen size unnecessarily and all that. So I do think a screen is worth it.
Right, I think it's a good idea as well.
Here would be perfect.
Yeah, and it's only going to be a couple $100. So we still got, as far as I'm concerned, we've still got $600 to spend. Should he try to put the front 3 speakers behind an acoustically transparent screen? He's a bit concerned that the normal screen would result in the center speaker being quite low, which would then be harder to hear. In the back row, a 106-inch screen would physically fit with the front 3 speakers to either side and below it, but if he goes to acoustically transparent, you could fit 120. So what should he do?
So the layout that he's done for the 120 acoustically transparent, which results in his front right speaker being inside of the bulkhead, and so I ain't good with that.
No, that's not working.
Now, Silver Ticket does sell a 110-inch size as well.
Yeah,
106, 110, and 120. I would go 110. Yeah. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I think so too. Having the not at option center. What? I can't read this. What does it say? Acoustically transparent.
Not
option?
acoustically transparent.
Oh, not
with,
okay. AT, not at option. Okay,
with a 106-inch. Yeah, I mean, I'd go the 110. That gets you I think it gets you from the seating, because the seating isn't exactly 11 or 12 feet back. It's like 10 and a half feet.
Dude, and do not worry about those people in the back wall being able to hear stuff. Those people
say
that those are not the people that you care about.
It's going to be your kids, and they're not going to care.
That's not the good people. He says the Epson 1040 doesn't offer any lens shift, and you can't afford to upgrade it right away. Thankfully, with the drop ceiling, it shouldn't be too difficult to move. But how do these make sure the screen won't end up being too high or too low, and that everything will line up properly?
You got the projector.
Yeah. Yep.
Cast the image.
Yep. Just hang a sheet up there.
Well, I mean, you can get the screen. We know the 110-inch screen. So you put in your stick framing, like we suggest. You get the 110-inch screen. You get it all built. You get a couple friends over.
You center your projector in the room, and you center the screen on the wall. I mean, that's
you
basically what happens.
You throw the image up there, and you get the screen. You get the two friends to hold the screen. You mark the positions.
Yep.
I will say this. If you can get the lens of the projector 12 feet away from the screen, so remember, you're going to have the stick framing, screen in front of that, lens of the projector 12 feet away from that. That's going to work for any, like, let's just say he ends up with the 120 because he just wants to do it, right? Okay. 12 feet away from lens to screen is going to work with this projector that you already have, and pretty much any projector you might get in the future. So 12 feet from lens to screen is a good place to aim for as far as the distance. Yeah, it is nice having the drop ceiling, because then, moving whatever's above there means replacing a tile instead of having to, refinish the whole ceiling. So that's another reason why drop ceilings are a nice thing to have. And then the way this projector, this 1040, is the lens. So let's say it's ceiling mounted and it's upside down, right?
Yeah.
The lens is actually slightly lower than the top edge of the image. Now, it's actually a 1920 by 1200 resolution. It's the 16 by 10 resolution. So there's this teeny tiny little black bar, and then the top edge of your 16 by 9 image, that's going to be about 2 inches above the center line of your lens.
Wow.
So basically right in line with the physical bottom of the projector that's hanging upside down. But yeah, I mean, you don't have the lens shift, so get the projector centered, get its lens 12 feet away from where the screen is going to be, throw the image, and then put the screen where that falls.
Right. So that's what screen material should you go for? White, gray, acoustic transparent, high contrast? Dude,
white.
You're just trying to spend money. No, white. You're in a light control room, game 1.0.
Mm-hmm. There's no windows in here.
I know. You got nothing. Just turn the lights off and you're done.
Now,
you got light control.
Should he be concerned at all about this, putting the center speaker behind acoustic? Because if he's putting in the stick framing, he could just put a little shelf to hold his center speaker within that stick framing and have acoustically transparent in front of that. It's going to increase the cost, but it's not going to blow your budget or anything if you get it from Silver Ticket. Should he do that? He has these 2 rows of seating. He's worried about the front row blocking it if the center's below the physical screen. What do you think?
I think it's just an added cost that you don't need. I mean, I just don't think it's worth it.
You're still going to have 2 feet of space on the wall below the screen. I'm of the opinion of spend as little as you can.
Yeah.
Right? The 110-inch, I think, is $220 from Silver Ticket for just the white, non-acoustically transparent 110-inch diagonal. You get that thing mounted on your stick frame. You put your center below it, your tower speakers to the left and right.
Let's assume that the wall is going to cost, if you do it yourself, it's going to, and the fabric and everything. Let's say that's another $200. So we've now spent half your budget.
With some insulation in it.
Yeah. We've now spent half your budget. All right, so that's where we're at. You want to go acoustically transparent? That's between you and the gods you serve. But I don't think it's necessary.
I'm not gonna forbid you from doing it, but I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah. So you physically move the surround speakers so they're closer to being beside the front row rather than the back row where they are now. The speaker wire mounts are already installed, so we could just aim the surround speakers more towards the front rather than physically moving them. You could do that. I would just move them. If it's not a huge deal, I would move them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a hassle because you got the in-wall wire, so it's not absolutely nothing. You got a little hole to patch. You got to move the in-wall wire. Yeah. But yeah, if you're willing to do it, I would. I think
it'd be worth it.
And if you're not, you know what? That's fine. Aim the speakers. I'm not gonna fret over that if that's what you decide to do. If you're like, you know what, I got baby stuff coming up, I got this new job I'm dealing with, I'm closing on this house, I really don't feel like moving a speaker right now. You got $400 left in your budget. You could pay someone to do it. It won't cost $400, but yeah, Either way, I think
try
it's
to
fine.
charge you $400, but yes.
Yeah, but if you can, moving them towards the front would be good.
So he already owns a Pioneer VSX 1124 receiver. It has higher wattage than whatever I guess he's using down there. And the Onkyo and the MCACC. Any reason you should stick with the Onkyo receiver instead?
No, that Onkyo receiver doesn't even decode Dolby True HD and DTS HD master audio. So no, use your Pioneer.
He already owns a pair of DefTech Pro Monitor 1000s. He was considering swapping out the existing Onkyo home theater box speakers for those. He also thought that since he'll be using Polks up front, that he could move the larger Onkyo speakers to the surround back positions. The existing Onkyo surrounds and surround back speakers don't really reach down to 80 hertz anyways. So would these swaps be a good idea?
Sure.
I'm okay with it. I'm 100% for all this.
They're all on hand. It's not costing any more money other than, moving the speakers. I don't know why that would cost any money. So, yeah, by all means, do it. You're going to be taking down those surrounds anyway if you move them. So
that's
put
right.
up the DefTechs instead.
So would bipole surround speakers be better for his 2 rows of seating? Dude, that back row's hosed anyway. So they are dead to you, right? They are dead to you. They're back there because they didn't make the cut. I
guess what he could do, he's
going to have surround back speakers directly above their heads. He's worried about the surround speakers. They're going to be like,
since the existing surrounds are already mounted beside that back row, he could wire in series a second pair of surround speakers next to the front row. He has the speakers on hand. They already exist.
But
do
then,
that.
Then he can't use the Pro Monitor ones that he wants to use.
No, he could. Those could be the ones on the front row. And the existing Onkyos could still be there.
They're
for the
all
back
8
row.
ohms, and how are you going to level match them to make sure that those are all the same
problem.
volume?
I mean,
he would have to take the Onkyos that were on the back, put those on the sides, right? So now he's got two
pairs of the same Onkyos on the sides.
On the sides,
put DefTechs at the back,
where they do nothing most of the time.
There you go, some options, but we're not whole hog on any of them. We've pretty much just moved the surrounds and do what you want to do there with the replacing.
In the future, he wants to upgrade both subwoofers, but should he wait until he can buy new dual subwoofers at the same time, or could he keep the SCF2 while getting a sub that can play lower and then get a second matching subwoofer later? Sort of a leapfrog approach. You could do it any way you want. I mean, SVS, if you buy one from them and then tell them you're going to buy the second one, they still give you the discount later, usually. So you could do it that way. I think
the STF2 in this room is good enough that, again, like the Onkyo, this isn't a case where, you got to throw that out and get the 2 that can play lower and louder. It's like, it's going to play loud enough. It plays linearly down to 25, not quite down to 20.
Yeah.
I'd be fine with keeping it at first.
Yeah. I mean, you can do it either way. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah, in this room size, it's not like it's going to start distorting so bad that it's going to be a problem or anything. It's a good sub.
Dude, we are up to L in his questions.
I know, man. You have a lot of questions.
through L. So he eventually wants a 7.2.4 Atmos setup with a 4K HDR projector. What order should he upgrade things?
Projector first.
Well, I mean, in this room,
from a 1040 to a 4K HDR projector, that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, I know, but still,
that's the biggest difference.
Speakers kind of suck. Yeah, but
but he's happy with his Polk. He doesn't know any better with his Polks. Why?
Now I feel like we're talking about it behind his back, but he's actually listening to us talk about it. But that's not.
No, he talked about it in his email, so he's good humored. He understands.
Yeah, no, I don't know why. Yeah, I guess I might agree. That projector's got to be first.
Oh yeah, projector first. Then I'm tempted to start upgrading speakers even before subs, because that STF2 is going to be fine for quite a while.
I would get one sub and then upgrade the rest of the speaker. Get rid of that Onkyo.
Get rid of the Onkyo sub, and then start speakers, and then
speakers.
Atmos last.
Oh, Atmos definitely last.
Yeah.
Second, okay. Buy new sub, speakers, buy other sub, Atmos.
Okay. I'm down with that.
That's the way I would do it. And of course, the projector first. Now, you got to realize you don't know what HDMI cable is in this setup here.
Oh, yeah.
So if this is an end wall and they put in whatever they could get.
So it's probably easier.
You can hope. And because if it's not, you're hosed.
But the equipment is all in the rear right corner, so it's not a tremendous distance.
That's true. So you might have a little bit of luck there on your side.
I mean, honestly, any high-speed cable might be fine because it should be up to about 15 feet. Any high-speed cable should be fine.
Yeah, we can hope. We can hope. I'm hoping. Mine's a 15-foot cable, to be honest with you. Lastly, as far as the room goes, should he be making any absorption panels a priority? Make adding absorption panels a priority. Should he try to black out all around the screen, maybe theater drapes at the sides of the screen, and replace his first few rows of ceiling tiles with black tiles instead of existing white tiles?
I like that. I like the tiles because that's easy to swap out.
I'm scrolling back up so I can look at his pictures. Hold on. This is like 2 pages.
So I mean, we already talked about if you put in the stick framing and fill the stick framing with insulation, you just put a whole bunch of absorption on your front wall. I guess you could put some absorption on the side walls because your front left and right speakers are going to be quite close to the walls, regardless of the plan.
Right.
So maybe you could put an absorption panel right on those side walls next to your front left and right speakers. Maybe the back wall. Yeah. Back wall's kind of bare.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely room for absorption in here. There's no doubt about that. And you would benefit from it. You've already got the acoustic tiles above you, which are doing something.
And the carpeted floor.
The carpeted floor, which is already doing something. But throwing up some acoustic panels in here would not be a bad idea. These are acoustic panels should be a thing that you put on your, because they're not nearly as expensive as they used to be.
And you can make them yourself if you're all handy.
Yeah. You can, but this is like something you put on your Father's Day, birthday list. You know what I mean? This is something you can get for relatively cheap. People spend $100, $200 on you for your birthday or for Christmas or whatever. You can get this place outfitted with some room treatments in a year or two. Just from that. Listen, this is what I want for everything. Every time you want to buy me something, this is it. Okay, buy me another one of these.
Get me another panel.
Get me another panel. I'll find a place to put it. And after you get about 6 panels in here and a couple of corner traps, you're going to be like, all right, we're done. We're done.
Yeah, your front wall's going to be built in. I'd say do the side walls next to your front speakers and maybe something on the back wall.
And some corner traps, and you're done. Well, your front wall's basically going to be in a complete base strap.
Yeah, the whole thing's going to be a nice absorption panel.
You really not going to need that much anyways. Andrew on Facebook. Andrew. Okay, so last week we talked about Andrew possibly returning his 55-inch Samsung TV for a 65-inch Vizio instead. With his viewing position about 12 feet away, we said go for it. Now Andrew wants to know if he should move his front left-right towers farther apart. He has a sideways-facing sofa on the right side, so his moving the front right speaker farther would mean farther to the right would mean that the bottom bass driver would be blocked, at least visually, from his main seat. Would that negatively impact the sound? I'm going to say no.
Nah, not really. Much. Not much of anything.
The bass is going to go right around that couch. And you're really, if you said the tweeter was going to be blocked by something, I would say you've got a problem here that you need to fix. But this is the bottom of 2 bass drivers.
Yeah. Yeah, that I'm not worried about. But the question is, should he bother spreading them out anymore to begin with?
No,
I mean, looking at the image, knowing he's 12 feet away, that is narrower than Dolby's guidelines. I can say that pretty definitively.
Oh, yeah.
But it looks like he's got something to the right or something to the left of the front left speaker. It almost looks like there's stairs to the right of his front right speaker. I can't quite see in this image, but it almost looks like there's something back there. And then you don't want your speakers tremendously wider than your image. Like that was never the goal.
If you could cheat him, I think he's just going to cheat him out a couple inches.
I mean, he could cheat him out a little bit more. If I think we're looking at the 55-inch screen right now, so the 65-inch screen is going to look a little bit bigger between them, and you can cheat him out a little bit. But I'm not worried about the sideways-facing couch blocking your bass drivers from your front right speaker. That's not a concern. But I wouldn't move them like crazy far apart.
What speakers are these? These are weird-looking speakers.
Those look like Paradigms.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen that white driver like that, though.
Yeah, they've had that. With the thing that looks like a phase plug but isn't.
Yes, the fake phase plus. So we have Kylo Ren on the right. Is that Darth on the left? I can't see.
I believe so.
I like ye.
Their heads are mounted. Yeah, I like that too. That's cute.
Yeah, it's very nice. I don't know what that is on the right. It looks like Iron Man on fire, but I don't think that's what it is.
But yeah, I mean, bottom line, yes, I would cheat them out a little bit farther apart than they are right now, but I wouldn't drive myself crazy about it.
Right.
Again, if they're a little bit narrower than Dolby says, it's not the end of the world.
Steve, Steve has a 2.35 to 1 projection screen, but his projector is only 1080p, and his sound system is only 5.2.
How do you live?
How do you live in such squalor, sir? It must be terrible. This is what the third world looks like. This is what happens when we don't send aid to these struggling countries. People have to suffer. Poor Steve.
Yeah, really.
He eats with his hands. He has no utensils. He has only 1080p and 2.35 to 1, 5.2.
Poor thing.
Oh. Anyways, he's still watching 1080p Blu-rays and no Ultra HD Blu-rays yet. Obviously, how could you? They won't even sell them to you. You're not worthy of them. You're not worthy of our Ultra HD Blu-ray. You can't handle them.
I don't know why there's an accent all of a sudden, but
I don't know. I just did that. It's happening. Let's just live with it. He thoroughly enjoys his experience at home. I don't know how, but now all the talk. Don't you just sit there in your chair, silently sobbing to yourself with your 1080p and your 2 subwoofers, only 5 speakers, just thinking about what everybody else has and you do not?
There better be no one who thinks we're actually being serious, like making fun of Steve in any way. If somebody writes in and thinks we're being mean to Steve, come on.
You gotta I'm reading it the way it was written, okay?
Well, of course I wrote it this way. I want to inject some humor into this.
His projector is only. It only is in quotes. And the 2 onlys are only in quotes. I'm reading it the way it was written, okay?
I have a 120-inch 2.35 to 1 screen, but it's only 1080p.
All right, anyways.
Woe is me.
Steve, we love you, Steve. He thoroughly enjoys his experience at home, but now all the talk is about 7.2.4 with speakers on the ceiling and 4K HDR projectors. He wouldn't mind having those things. He'd enjoy the bragging rights, and they will let him back in the country club if he gets them. Sorry, but he's only seen 5 movies at Dolby Cinemas now, and while they look and sound great, they aren't that much better than when he gets at home. Upgrading to all the latest stuff would cost quite a bit, so is it really worth it? And I say, sir, no. I'll be honest with you. I don't think it is.
Even though we're doing it.
We do it not because we should, because we can. And there's some weird sense of, like you said, bragging rights. You're like,
I mean, to me, that almost answers the question.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I wouldn't mind it. I'd like to brag about it. So it's like, well, if you had the money on hand, guess where it's getting spent?
Yeah. I mean, I've got people come in my home theater and think I'm an idiot. You know, I've got 7, 8, 9 speakers, 2 subwoofers, a rack of stuff. I've got a pile of AV gear in the corner that I don't use. That I haven't bothered to put back in the boxes and put them back out in the garage where I've brought them in here for one reason or another. I've got stuff that's just sitting around here. And Rob's got a closet full of crap that just sits there collecting dust.
Pretty much.
Is it worth it? Well, the fact is, there are real substantive upgrades that you can do to your home theater. Sure. I mean, going from stereo to surround is mind-blowing. Going from not having a subwoofer to having 2 subwoofers changes your perspective. Going from CRTs to HD displays to front projections will absolutely change the way that you experience your home theater. Putting Atmos speakers into your theater will be like, oh, that's nice. Most people, that's not good enough. I forgot to turn my fan off. I just realized 2 hours into this podcast that my fan has been on this whole time.
Oh, you're probably more comfortable.
I am more comfortable, but I'll have to do noise reduction.
To me, the HDR, Atmos, and this was even the case of like going from DVD to Blu-ray. To me, it's more noticeable by its absence, right? Like if you get used to watching nothing but HD with full surround sound, and then you go back to standard def with stereo, you're like, the standard def with stereo is still perfectly watchable, but I kind of miss the HD and surround sound, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So once you get used to lots of HDR and lots of Atmos soundtracks, and then you go back to 1080p with standard dynamic range and 5.2 surround instead of Atmos surround, you're like, I kind of miss the Atmos and the HDR a little bit. But I mean, I just had the experience over at my parents' place this past weekend. My niece and nephew and my sister were over too, and we put on Mary Poppins, which my parents have on DVD. We never got the Blu-ray of it. They have it on DVD, and this is on their new OLED with their Vizio soundbar, watching a DVD copy of Mary Poppins, and it was entirely enjoyable.
Yeah.
You know, it still looked good. The songs were still great. It's still Mary Poppins. We had a great time watching it with my niece and nephew. Everybody had a good time. Now, could it have looked and sounded even better? Yes.
I have the Blu-ray. In case you ever want to watch the Blu-ray, you come to my house. Watch Blu-ray.
Like, this is still entirely enjoyable. Like you said, you're like, yeah, I went to Dolby Cinema. Cool. Sounds great. Looks fantastic. Come home. Looks just about as good and sounds just about as good, right? So, look, if you got the money on hand, you already answered this, right? You wouldn't mind the bragging rights. You wouldn't mind having this stuff. So, of course, you're going to end up buying it at some point.
Dead
That's
honest
who you
with
are.
you.
That's
Okay,
who we are.
I wired this surround sound system for 7.2.
Sure.
Okay, I wired it for 7.2, which means I had wires hanging out of holes in the back of my home theater.
Yeah.
I mostly put up surround back speakers just to cover those holes, and one of those holes is still visible from where I'm sitting right now. It sort of drives me nuts, but it's, you know, I think that the 7 on top of the 5 made that much of a difference? The answer is absolutely not. I can't say never, because the one time I did do it. I have very rarely ever thought to myself, wow, the surround back speakers really made a difference in this one. They just don't. I'm sorry.
Now, if you can add front wide speakers and 6 overhead speakers instead of only 4, that's completely transformative, and you have to do it, and you have to take out a loan and mortgage your house to do it. You must, Steve. It's the only thing.
We get the anthem. You got to go out there and get the anthem and all that stuff. So, yeah, dude, no, you're fine. I'm still rocking 1080p. I'm still rocking Blu-rays, and I'm doing just fine. I have no intention of upgrading to 4K unless somebody sends me a 4K projector and says, here. That's about the only way it's going to happen. It's going to be the last one. I think this might be the last one.
Oh, well, the 10th one is so short, so I'm sure we can, because, yeah. Let's race through this one, because I don't even want to spend too much time on it, and then last one's short, so, yeah.
Carl. The HT guys had another interview with David Dix from Common Sense Audio, which, if I remember correctly, wasn't very senseful. Nor was it common, in which they claimed to be busting audio myths. Carl enjoyed our take on David's previous claims about single full-range driver designs, and now Carl wants to hear what we think about his latest statements. Some of the things he said are, A, there are 3 types of home theater equipment, good, bad, and boutique, including wires. He favors opting for good, or neutral gear, which is good, the good stuff, rather than the boutique, because then you might have bright wires paired with bright amp, and you need dull speakers to compensate, and blah, blah, blah.
So overall, I'm completely in agreement.
I totally agree with the statement. Unfortunately, I don't want to, but I do agree with the statement. He is right. Boutique or high-end, like super-duper expensive high-end gear, essentially are passive EQs on everything that they do.
Yeah.
And you do have to mix and match gear in order to get stuff that sounds good. Or you can spend a lot less money and get stuff that doesn't color the sound, and it just comes out right the first time. But then you wouldn't have to be able to brag about your $50,000 speaker wires.
Now, the one part I want to take issue with is bright wires kind of don't exist.
No,
you can get dull wires, because almost everything you can do to a wire. So the proper wire basically does nothing to the signal. Signal goes through, didn't change it. That's what you want your wire to do, and I'm in agreement with that. We both say the same thing there. But everything that you could do to a wire, which would be it has high resistance, or it has high capacitance, or it has high inductance. Now, capacitance and inductance are reciprocals over each other, so if one goes up, the other one automatically goes down. But you could have high resistance and high capacitance, or high resistance and high inductance. The result of high anything in a wire is attenuation of the high frequencies.
Yeah.
So a bright wire would literally have to have some kind of other filter inserted. Now, the ironically named transparent cables insert a battery into the wire. So doing something like that actually could start to attenuate frequencies other than the high frequencies if you did some weird thing. So he's not even wrong about that. There could be, it's it's feasible to create something called a bright wire that nothing can boost the frequencies, but it could attenuate everything other than the high frequencies if you did something really weird to it. But by and large, what a wire will do is attenuate the high frequencies if it does anything. So that's a nitpick to make with that statement. But other than that, yeah.
B, 2. High frequencies only travel on the circumference of a wire, so speaker wire with fewer strands will have less highs because it has less surface area.
They said they were busting myths. This is perpetuating one of the existing.
This is called
myths.
Skin effect. They've been talking about skin effect for a
which is a real thing.
It is a real thing if your wire is like this big and you're sending a bazillion, gigawatts down
really high frequency.
Really, 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 really high. And this is not the case here. It has been categorically disproven that skin effect has any effect. They have taken
at audio frequencies
as they have taken wire coat hangers, which are a single strand, if you were not familiar, and use that as speaker wire without telling these people who apparently can hear all the things that can't be heard by the human ear. And they work just fine. They don't do anything to the audio signals whatsoever. And that's just one strand.
Purely objectively, if we're talking about copper wire, which he was like, there's no reason to get silver, there's no reason to get anything crazy, which I agree with.
Agree with that.
Some copper wire. It's plentiful and cheap. So copper wire, there is what they call the skin depth, which is, how far from the outer surface of the wire towards the middle of the wire, how far down do you have to go before the signal is attenuated 50%, or I think it's 0.37% or 0.37, so 37%. So there's the skin depth that they're talking about. Now, for a copper wire at 20 kilohertz, the highest frequency we can possibly hear, and most of us can't even hear that high, the skin depth is 0.5 millimeter. So if the individual strand is 1 millimeter total in diameter, there is objectively no skin effect whatsoever at the highest frequency that we can possibly hear. Now, you might think 1 millimeter, that's small, but that's pretty thick for a single strand of wire. Right? It is. Right. It's pretty thick. So 12 gauge wire is 2 millimeters in diameter. So if it was a solid single piece that is 12 gauge, there would actually objectively be a little bit of skin effect going on. That is a fact. A solid 18 gauge wire is 1 millimeter in diameter. There's no skin effect whatsoever at any audio frequency. But I haven't seen much speaker wire that is one solid chunk. If you're using Romex, that might not be a great idea. But even then, still really not going to
make any difference.
But even then, if there is skin effect doesn't attenuate the high frequency. It just means at that frequency, the effective gauge of the wire is a higher number. It is effectively a skinnier wire because the signal is propagating more towards the outer edges of that strand of wire than along the middle. It doesn't mean that there's any impact to the signal. It just means that effectively you've gone from, say, a 12 gauge wire to an 18 gauge wire, but the signal will still go through. It's not like they suddenly go, we have to stop going because it's a skinnier wire, effectively. That's not how that works. So skin effect, not a thing to worry about. I don't know why he talked about it.
Because he's a crazy person. C, or number 3. It's okay to use higher gauge or skinnier speaker wires with his speakers because they are highly sensitive and so they don't need very many watts. So I guess the idea here is that he thinks, apparently, that the thinner the wire, the less watts can go through because they got to all line up. I guess.
You do want a thicker wire the more current you're sending through it for heat dissipation purposes. That's what that's about. I mean, you can send a gazillion watts down a skinny wire. It's just going to heat up and possibly cause
the reality of the situation is that in most home theaters, any reasonable gauge wire is going to be fine no matter how many watts you're sending down it or how sensitive the speakers are or any of that garbage. So it's it's a perfectly safe thing for him to say. You could say this about literally any speaker.
No, I mean, as the wire gets skinnier, its resistance tends to get higher. Right. And as the wire gets longer, the resistance tends to get higher. Mm-hmm. So if you have a really long length, even if it's going from a low wattage amplifier to a highly sensitive speaker, if it's 3,000 feet long, you still want a fairly thick wire to do that. Mm-hmm. It's really about the distance that you're going. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't even really know what that statement was about.
D, or 4.
Well, if he's saying there are these people selling like 2 gauge wires and you don't need that for any speaker, yeah, you're right. You don't.
That's not what he's saying. He's saying he don't need it for his speakers because they're sensitive. He didn't say that all. I know that. Don't explain it to me. Come right across this computer and slap your Canadian face. 4, or D, boutique amplifiers are essentially just an amp with a tone control that you can't adjust, so better to get a straightforward neutral amp and add an external EQ if you want to alter the tone at the amplifier stage.
I completely agree.
I'm okay with that. Which is basically saying is, he's not saying this, but what I'm basically saying is don't waste your money on boutique amplifiers or really high end. I hate saying high end, really very expensive amplifiers that look pretty and stuff, because generally speaking, that's what you're getting. Not always. There are very expensive, very good amplifiers out there too.
Yeah.
So let's not.
The Krell amps are very expensive, and they're very neutral and very good and very high wattage.
It's because we know who makes them. 5, or E, tubes can be unreliable. Solid state amps tend to be more consistent, and a tube amp might even have an imbalance between different channels. But when tube amps clip, they do so without the harsh distortion of a solid state amp.
Well, if you put some soft clipping on that thing, you're fine.
Yeah, that's true. The rest of it's okay, though. Tubes can be unreliable, true. Solid-state amps tend to be more consistent, can also be true. And a tube amp might even have an imbalance between the different channels. That's also true, especially if they have tubes from different whatever, and the tolerances are different. Yeah.
But he did also say if they're designed properly, they sound the same, which is also true.
Also true.
Yeah.
He says he favors Class AB amps because Class A amps generate a lot of heat, and Class D can still sound harsh. I don't necessarily agree with the categorization overall of harsh. I understand why you would. Class A amps do run cooler than Class A amps, so that is a true statement, he said, simply by design. That's what the whole idea of a Class AB amp is, because the Class A just loses so much to heat, like 75%.
And a lot of very smart people have worked on Class AB amplifiers for many decades now, and the design is pretty darn solid.
I have had issues with Class D amps. I wouldn't describe them as sounding harsh or anything like that, and a well-designed Class D amp can be just fine. So lumping them all together as sounding harsh, I do not agree with.
No, the challenge with a Class D amplifier is that if there are large swings in impedance across different frequencies, particularly high frequencies, that is a challenge. It can be overcome, but it requires a lot of circuitry and a lot of redundancy of sending the signals sort of back through the thing over and over and over to overcome that limitation. So if you get a really well-designed Class AB amp, it can drive any speaker that's out there. If you get an excellently designed Class D amp, it can also do the same. It'll just probably be more expensive.
Yeah. Last but not least, we have Rob W, which is different than Rob H. So, Rob went with our recommendations for some 6.5 monoprice caliber series in-ceiling speakers for background music in his office and kids' playroom. He'd still prefer to give them backer boxes, though, so that they won't leak as much sound into the rooms above. Monoprice sells plastic in-ceiling back enclosures, but they seem awfully small and more like dust covers rather than in sort of soundproofing. He'd be perfectly comfortable building some backer boxes themselves, but Monoprice didn't offer any information about recommended internal volume. So you just go with the pre-made plastic covers, or can you build some backer boxes without specific internal volume to aim for? I didn't click on this link. Can I click on this link real quick?
Sure.
Let me see here.
Yeah, I mean, those are there for... So a lot of in-ceiling speakers are going where the attic is what's above the room.
Yeah, sure.
So fire safety code requires...
I was going to say, those are just... when you're in... That's just like an in-wall backer box for like a light switch, like a light.
Yeah, for like a can light, it could be, but it happens to be for the speakers in this case. And yeah, that's for fire. That's where they're required for fire safety. That's what those are for.
I would just build a thing around it and just fill it with insulation or whatever, and
like just put so you got the ceiling joists above you, because this is a basement room. So you got the ceiling joists above you. Block out, like they just put like 2x6s maybe. Yeah. Right. Or 2x8s, whatever, but just block out between the joists, like not actually build a whole separate box or whatever. Just block it out, throw a bunch of insulation in there. I mean, I guess you could put an extra topper on there if you really want to go soundproof-ish. But the thing is, if you stuff basically whatever blocking out you do, if you stuff the whole thing with insulation, as far as the back of that speaker is concerned, it's got infinity cubic feet now. I mean, not really, but that's That's sort of what's going on there. The speaker was designed to go into an open bay. There isn't really a recommendation for cubic feet to go behind it. It's not a in-wall speaker with a desired amount of cubic feet of volume behind the driver. So it's just supposed to go into a ceiling joist. So yeah, you can feel free to build any backer box of basically any size you want, stuff the whole thing full of loose insulation, and that's about it. It'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah. That's what I would do. I would just kind of like essentially frame around it, and then stuff insulation all around it, and that you're just kind of good to go. That's what I think what I would do.
That's it. Simple.
You can
told you that one was short.
You could still even do that. You could actually buy those little weird covers on the back of it, put that in there, and then also do what we just said, and it would help.
I don't know. At that point, I'd be worried about the insulation actually getting rammed into the back of the driver.
Yeah,
that you don't want.
All right. That's the end of that. We answered all our questions this week, and if you would like to ask a question, please email us at question@avrant.com. The rest of the contact information is at the front of the podcast. You got anything else, Rob? You gonna share any information? Any life tips?
Nope. Just want to reiterate our thanks for our listeners of the week.
We've got our people who donated. We have Martin, Greg, Brad, and Jeff, who went to www.avrant.com, clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and left us a donation. Thank you, Martin, Greg, Brad, and Jeff.
Indeed, Martin, Greg, Brad, Jeff. Thank you so much for those donations.
And we'll thank Casey again for talking us up to SVS, and for apologizing to his wife. With some
Casey, I hope you enjoy spooning your new cylinder subwoofer. It's like a fantastic bedside companion for you. It's his new body pillow.
Do not do any of the things that Rob just said. It's not your wife will not approve of you spooning.
Probably not. Yeah, if you thought your wife was angry before,
she's gonna be very confused and angry now. Quite flummoxed. You too will not be able to enter the country club. You and Steve, barred for life. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.